expect you guys to be very interactive as well, okay? First thing I need you to do, look at the person next to you.
Oh, no.
All right, look to him.
Oh, I looked at
Okay. Yeah.
Now look at him and say, you know, he's a lot better looking in person than what I thought he was going to be.
He's a lot better looking than I
All right, now I got you guys' attention a little bit. Flathead, Flathead presentations, all right? For those, like Steve said, my name is Chris Souders, for those of you who don't know me. Two-time Angler of the Year for Cabela's. Flathead, I love flatheads. That's really my bread and butter, okay? I also run Souders Outdoors. For anybody that likes the information we're going to share here with you guys today, please go to Souders Outdoors for more tips and tricks on catching catfish, okay? Flathead presentations. Now, there's a lot of variables that go into flatheads. Time of year, the water, weather, the body of water, it all plays a big role. But to me, the most important thing, 9 times out of 10, is what we're going to be presenting to them, okay? Now, there's a lot of people in here. What are some of y'all's favorite flathead baits to use?
Bluegill.
Shrimp, bluegill, perch, bullheads, that's a good one. Now, I've caught a lot of fish on just about all those baits, okay? But I like to keep things basic. For me, I stick to what I consider the 4 major food groups for flatheads. Bluegill, skipjack, moon eye, and gizzard shad. Keep it basic. The most important thing you need to know about your bait is it has to be the freshest bait you can possibly get, no matter what. You're hindering yourself if you go out with old, rotten, dead bait. Now we're going to touch a little bit on these and go through them, and if you guys have questions, please do not hesitate to interrupt me. If we get off track, that's fine. We'll get back on it. I work for CSX. That's okay.
You're saying fresh, but not necessarily live?
No, absolutely. First question was, I'm saying fresh, but does it have to be alive? No, absolutely not. That is a misconception that a lot of people have, that when catching flatheads, you've got to use live bait, and you don't. But one thing you need to do is learn how to let them tell you what they want, okay? If they want cut bait one day, they may want live bait the next day. And there's times of the year that we're going to get into that does make a difference in water condition and water flow and stuff like that. That does make a difference on what you use.
But you want them fresh, not frozen.
I want them fresh, unless they come from Big Cat Bait Company.
Okay. All right.
Now, if they come from there,
They're all right.
they're good.
All right.
Bluegills. Now, that's probably how most of us got our start, right? Catching bluegills, sunfish, brim. Fairly easy to keep alive, good bait all over the country. Real simple, cut or live. Now, I get a lot of questions on gizzard shad. How to catch them, where to catch them, things like that. I catch all my gizzard shad in throw nets, cast nets, okay? And a lot of people, I think, go above and beyond when they're throwing a cast net. You need to make sure a couple things. One, that you're using a legal bait size net for the area you're going to fish. Match it up to your ability. If you can legally throw a 10-foot net, but your ability does not allow you to throw a 10-foot net, you're not using that net to its full potential, okay? Back yourself down, use a full potential net. Next,
They don't make anything smaller than 3 foot.
go to a dip net, I guess. Next, we want to match the size net up to the size bait we get. A lot of people ask me what size bait I like to use. If I want 8, 10, 12-inch gizzard shad, I'm going to use a bigger cast net, say a 1x1 mesh size net. That's going to allow a couple things. It's going to allow that net to fall quicker and allow the smaller ones to escape, keeping only what we want in that net. Now, just the opposite. If they want small baits, then we need small baits. We're going to have to use a smaller net, say a 3/8 by 3/8. That's going to sink slower, allowing the bigger baits to escape out from underneath it, trapping your smaller baits inside. Now, you will catch a few of the bigger ones. You just have to weed them out if you want. Backwaters, marinas, creeks, sewer discharges, spillways, they all make good areas to catch gizzard shad, okay? Next, skipjack. If you have a kid that you're wanting to introduce into the world of fishing, take them skipjack fishing. It's fun, it's furious. Like most bait fish, they will congregate at lock and dams on the Tennessee River, the High River, Cumberland River, parts of the Mississippi. We're going to use curly tails, sabiki rigs, float minnows, catch these fish. Once again, this we can't keep alive, so we're going to keep it as fresh as we can. Okay? Put it on ice as soon as you can get it. Moon eye. How many people in here use moon eye? If you do not know what moon eye is, and you have it in your area, it is my number 2 go-to bait for flatheads. It's phenomenal. Once you figure out how to catch them, they're fairly easy. They're about like bluegill. Okay, you just got to find where they want to be. We use crickets, mealworms, waxworms, float them underneath a bobber. And just like skipjack, they conjugate at your lock and dams. We're going to fish off current seams for these, spillways, behind barges. Steve Douglas has got a good video out. You guys can go watch on how to catch them behind a barge. Now we have a good idea of the 4. We talked a little bit about those. Is there any questions about those 4 baits before we move on? All right. Now next we're going to look at where we want to fish. Okay? Go ahead.
When you cut your bait up, is there a special way you cut them? Fix the blade?
Question was, is there any special way I cut my bait up? No. Once again, you just try different things. Small baits, big baits, fillets, gut pockets, things like that. Just let them tell you what they might prefer. Because they may want a whole head or whole half a skipjack or whatever. You just kind of got to let them fill them out and let them tell you what they want. Next thing is where we want to fish. And this is where the time of year comes into play, okay? First part of the year, we got spring, early April into early June. These fish are coming off their wintering holes. They're hungry. They're very active. This is the best time to be on the water. They're going to use highways, these ledges right here, just like highways. This is a picture perfect of what happens in the springtime. See these 4 big white marks? Those are 4 real nice flatheads. I caught those fish, okay? Those are high traffic areas where they're moving to their feeding areas and post and pre-spawning areas. These barges, they hold bait, lots of bait. They're shallow, they got a lot of structure underneath of them. They're high concentrated areas for bait. These make really good areas regardless of depth. In the springtime, these fish are super hungry, super active. They will go into super shallow water because they're hungry. Next, we want to talk about summer. And if you notice, I left out a section between June and August. This is probably the worst time to be on the water, and it's best just to let them be. Let them do the thing. We got a lot of kids in here that we want to see fishing for future generations. If we let those fish be while they're spawning, that's going to ensure a better fishery for us and for them. So let's get back to August into September. Now these fish have come off the spawn. They're hungry again. Now they're going to become predictable. They're going to become homebodies. And we're going to start fishing isolated pieces of structure, okay? Now, this is not a real huge tree, by no means. But if you have a bank that's 300 to 400 foot long, okay, and this is the only isolated tree in that section, the biggest, baddest fish in that area is going to be in that tree. That's his home for the summer. And odds are, if you go back to that same tree year after year, you'll catch that same fish. Sunken barges. How many people in here like to fish sunken barges? Or know of any sunken barges around? In the summertime, odds are a lot of these sunken barges are out in the middle, towards the middle of the river. Your current in the summertime will low down. These sunken barges will hold a lot of fish. That's where your majority current is. That's where they want to be. Gives an opportunity to get inside that nasty cover, ambush something that swims by. Isolated brush piles. I was talking to a gentleman here a little bit ago in Frog Legs. I'm going to say your name. He kept asking me questions. I told him he had to ask them in here, but he just kept at it. Isolated brush piles. Now you notice this is not a huge area, okay? In the summertime, I concentrate on key areas that I can go to and fish and leave. If we have an isolated brush pile like this right here, I can go to that and with 30 minutes know whether he's in there or he's not. If I have a big, long, straight stretch of brush, I've got to take my time and pick through each little hole in that. And odds are there's going to be fish in it, but they're going to be smaller, okay? We want those bigger, meaner fish, okay? That's what we want to look for. So, any questions on where we want to fish? Now coming into fall, we want to put both of them together. We want to fish that heavy structure, but we want to go back to fishing those ledges and those barges where that bait is. They're getting ready to go back to their wintering holes. and they will follow those ledges again just like highways. We want to mix them both together in the fall. Now, big question is how we present these baits to those fish in those key areas, right? I'm kind of old school. I prefer to anchor. And we're not talking about just pitching an anchor out the front of the boat and hoping for the best. With today's technology, a lot of your higher end sonars have measuring features on them. So we're going to do what we call precision anchoring, okay? Now, for this one instance, we're going to be talking about Lowrance HDS 12. Humminbird, Garmin, they all have a measuring feature on them some way, shape, or form. If I'm going down the river, as you can see, I got the chart illuminated. Right here, you see the measuring. If I'm going down through there and I'm square on that bank, and I'm going to go up to that waypoint, as soon as I cross over whatever I want to fish, I hit the measure button. Now, does everybody see that little square down there at the bottom? That's going to automatically tell me exactly how many feet I am from that structure that I want to fish. Okay? So now, we're going to go straight upriver. We're going to drop our anchor. And for me, the equation is about 200 foot. I drop my anchor, I back up to about 65, 70 foot. That's a good, easy cast for me. And that's going to be different for each one of you on how good you cast and things like that. Make sure that whenever you hit that measure button, that you're square with that bank. And you'll see these reference marks. As long as you go straight up that reference mark, up that bank, and come back, you're going to be exactly square. You're going to know exactly where you want to be on that structure. Now, for people that may not have a higher end, whose pop bottle is this? Is this yours? I'm going to use it.
Please.
Okay. Now, for people that don't have the higher end electronics, there's still ways we can do this. As simple as a pop bottle like this, some spray paint, a sinker, and some line. We're going to make a buoy. Okay? As we're driving up through there, looking at our sonar, we see that structure or cover we want to fish. We know it's 40 foot. We got 45, 50 foot of line on this. We're going to pitch it straight up the back of the boat. And now that's going to give us an absolute target to hit. We go straight up, drop our anchor, back straight up, and we can physically see where we need to be fishing, okay? Now, comes the hard part. As you can see, I'm right smack dab in the middle of the river. It does take practice, but you can see the spawn marks on him right here. He's come off spawn. He's out there in the middle of the cover, resting. But by using precision anchoring, we're able to come up on big fish like this. Spot lock. I was talking to a gentleman just a little bit ago about it. If you have this ability on your trolling motor, please take advantage of it. It's going to save your back. It's just so much easier, so much faster. The way this works, you got the trolling motor down. You go up to wherever you want to be. Say you want to be 50 foot from that structure that we was talking about. There's a little button that looks just like an anchor on your remote. You hit that button. It automatically does GPS and holds you in that exact spot. Now you may sway back and forth a little bit. You may have to put a drift sock out to hold you straight. But trust me, it does work. It does pay dividends. Makes things a lot faster and a lot easier. So now, let's talk a little bit about rigs. Just like bait, we need to keep things basic, okay? We don't want to overthink things. There's 1,000 ways to catch a catfish. But basic is hard to beat day in and day out, okay? First one is slip rig, Carolina rig, however you want to call it. It's just a sinker slide, swivel, 18, 20 inches of the leader line, and I got 40-pound mono and 80-pound leader line, okay? Down to a snelled offset hook.
8/0.
Yeah, well that's a 7/0 D85 Diachi. Okay? Now, summertime, this is my go-to rig. When the bite gets real slow and those fish are real finicky, it gives them just that little bit of extra play with that good soft rod to pull down and really get that bait in their mouth good, okay? Now, springtime, fishing's real active, fish are hungry, fish are aggressive. We can use a three-way and get away with it. Okay, it's sinkers directly to your swivel, same leader line, same hook. This will keep you out of snags a lot easier. Okay, and I'm not going to go saying that you're going to get this out of every brush pile you throw it in, but it's a lot easier to get that sinker straight back than it is with that sinker slide. my go-to, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen this on videos on YouTube, is a double hook Kentucky rig. Okay, we've got a sinker on the bottom, formerly known as a Willie rig, and he's sitting back there if anybody ever wants to learn how to tie one. You can thank this man for showing me this rig many years ago and have helped me win a lot of tournaments on it. You got a sinker on the bottom, down to a loop. That's just a double Kentucky loop, small hook. And the good thing is there's so many variations, okay? We can have live bait down here, cut bait up here, 2 cut baits, 2 small pieces of cut bait, making it smell like a bigger bait, but it's just one small bait. A lot of different variations. Make him smell good, make him hear it, make him figure out whether he wants it or not. So now comes the part I want you guys to interact. And there's a lot of yellow stuff up here that I'd like to give away. So the more questions, the better. The more questions you guys ask, the more we're going to be able to learn. So let's hit some questions.
On one of your YouTubes where you show you're getting ready for a tournament,
Yes, sir.
it looks like you're bringing your map into the house and going over your navigation map in the house. How do you do that?
Okay, question was, how do I go over my navigation map in the house? There's a couple ways. Navionics.com, you can get on their website and look at all their chart options, okay? But you can also bring your sonar, get a 12-volt adapter and an extra power cord for your sonar, and bring it in the house, and while your wife's watching Days of Our Lives, you can sit there and play on Navionics. And you both are happy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right.
You always fish on bottom?
Do I always fish on bottom? Yes and no. So, I'm giving you a frisbee.
Gee, thanks.
So, question was, do I always fish on bottom? My sinker's always on bottom. My baits, with like the double hook rig, it may be as much as 2-3 foot off bottom, okay? So, yes and no. Do I ever drift for flatheads? No. But I do fish off bottom with floats and live bait and things like that when the current gets down low. Especially around industries. You can take a float with a live bait and say it's 20 foot deep, set it 16 foot, 15 foot, maybe even 18 foot, and float it down in between those barges, around those barges, and pick up fish like that.
On one of your videos, you show how to make dragon tails and kind of promote them a little bit. Do you use them very often? And if so, what do you think is your optimal length, weight combination?
Okay, so the question was, do I use dragon tails, and what is the optimum weight and length? So I do use them. I do, especially when the current dies. I do, and it really depends on the structure that I'm fishing. If I have found a bank that I feel like I can go down through and pick a lot of smaller fish, 10, 12 pound fish off of, and it's real brushy and snaggy, I'm going to use a bigger one to kind of help my odds of getting myself in and out of it. But if I got a nice smooth bottom, I don't use much weight, and I like to keep them small. So I would say, to answer that, in a smooth bottom, maybe 2 ounces, 1.5 ounces. But on snaggy stuff in a river, I may be using a little bit more weight, say 4 or 5 ounces. So hopefully that answers your question.
Does the length?
Yes, the length matters a lot. So if it's real deep brush, a longer one is going to help you get up and over.
You only use about 5 ounces, but a longer too.
Yes, yes. And you can do that with not just the dragon weights, like say the Larry Muse dragon weights. You can do that with just by adding string to a sinker, in a hard time.
Do you ever free line for a flathead?
Do I free line for flatheads? Yes, in dead water in summer, around industry. It is good. It's it just recently kind of come out on a video that somebody done, I think down in Tennessee, I believe it was, and he was doing it around a dam. But it is effective. I mean, water clears up in the summertime, the current dies. You're giving them a natural presentation. and they look hurt. You know, they got a hook in their back.
You were talking about you mostly anchor up on this. I mostly use cut bait on the Cumberland River, but it seems like the two big flatheads I've gotten have been cut bait when I was drifting because of the fact I come upon a shallow sandbar, bumped it, and then they hammered it. Is
Okay.
that more because even though it's a cut bait, it's acting realistic like it's alive?
I would say I don't know the actual, you know, situation he was in, but from what the question was, I mainly anchor fish, and you was fishing around a sandbar on the Cumberland River. Okay, did you have current?
Well, the first time with a big one, 36 pounder, it was about 5 miles an hour. It was a bad day, so I went ahead and drifted along the edge of the inside bank, and he hammered it.
Okay, you was drifting in 5-mile-an-hour current.
And I was using the trolling motor to slow me down, so I was probably drifting still at about 3.
Okay, but you come up on the structure that he was behind.
Yeah.
Then that makes sense. You know, it hit that, it bounced off, and then now it's looking realistic. And you know, those fish are, I mean, flatheads. Somebody don't just hand them a bait every day, you know, down there in the water. You know, so they have to do just a lot like blue cats. You know, they have to come out into that current too. You know, they're predators just like anything. But I do feel that for some reason that fish was active, and he was sitting there ready for something to come through there, and that was just the opportune time for him to do it.
Do you fish in lakes for flathead?
What's your favorite lake?
I got you. So, I'm gonna have to catch you a little bit everybody up. I was doing a seminar. Who was it? I was doing a seminar in Pennsylvania. I wish he was in here. He's running a booth over there called Tackling Cats. His name's Willie. Willie, you in here? Not Willie Smith, but Willie. No, he's not. And he kept asking me questions about lakes. And I tried to tell him I don't really fish lakes. I fish rivers. It's not that I don't like a lake, and not that you can't catch flatheads in lakes, but I prefer to fish rivers. So he proceeded to, and I tried to tell him, I said, Willie, I don't fish a lake. How many times I got to tell you? And I was telling him about it, and now I'm getting a hard time about it. What's your name?
Ron.
Ron. So, no, I really don't like fishing lakes.
Are you gonna fish the king cat on March 23rd?
Where at?
Flathead Road.
No. No. Now there is a lot of. He did ask me what my favorite lake was, and I said, does it have to be a lake, or can it be a river inside of a lake? And he said it can be a river inside of a lake, and I said, okay, Tennessee River. Anybody else?
Do you ever use any rattle, anything that rattles?
I do. I'm not. So the Versa rattles, just the ones that just slide them down the line. I do use those, and it's kind of a give and take. You know, I mean, I've caught fish on them, but I haven't. Sometimes, you know, I'm not going to say that it's going to hurt you, because I've caught them with it, but I've not caught enough to say, hey, I want to fish every rod for flatheads with them. You know, does that understand? You know what I mean?
You said you were looking for isolated brush piles.
Mhm.
I've seen a pretty good water column there, so you're not sure the trees that are laying on the shore?
Okay, the question was, I was talking about isolated brush piles, and he noticed, and he picked up on something on the image on the sonar, which is a good thing to do. You know, he was not just looking and listening, but he was looking at what I was actually showing. And the screen, let's see if I can pull it back up. This one?
That's one of them, yeah.
Okay.
You had a couple of them.
Okay, and he's saying, you know, he's noticing that it is actually in some deeper water, and that, you know, his question was, do I target kind of on the banks or out more towards in the middle of the river? I try to look for things that are more so off the beaten path than other people will see. So if everybody sees that tree that's on the shoreline or shallower, and I will fish that in times, you know, when high current situations, or maybe at nighttime when they're kind of moving up a little bit shallower. But I like to concentrate on stuff that is off by itself. You know, maybe not so many people know about it. Maybe it's out towards the middle of the river. Those fish are going to be in it just as well as kind of on the bank.
So you're saying these fish make that their home, and he'll stay there all summer?
He'll stay there all summer, and even sometimes if he comes back there the next year and that's still there, he'll be back there the next year. And I know that's kind of hard to believe.
And he's the dominant guy, and ain't nobody gonna take him.
That's exactly right. You know, it's his house, and that's where he wants to be.
Cause I seen a catfish laying in the back of a Volkswagen, diving. I mean, he took up the whole back seat. That was his home. He would live there.
If he felt comfortable there.
He just laid out. He took up the whole back seat.
That's a nice fish.
When you catch shad, you put them on ice?
Okay, the question was, do I catch shad? Or when I catch shad, do I put them on ice? No. To me, now channel catfishing and blue catfishing is a little bit different, but to me personally, a shad that is dead, every second it's dead, it's that much more worthless. Okay? If you cut a dead shad that you had on ice for say 2 days, now you know there is times where you can catch fish on that, flatheads particularly. But me personally, if I'm going to target big flatheads, I want them to still be breathing when I cut them. Okay, that's what I prefer. Or live, one of the two. That way I can assure myself that is the freshest bait I can possibly get.
You still cut them the way, even if you get them out alive, you cut them.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Any tricks to keep them alive?
Okay, question was, any tricks to keeping shad alive?
Extreme bank tank?
Well, yes, there is. You don't overpopulate a tank for one. Take care of them. You know, make sure that whenever you catch them, you know, I don't like, even though I can throw a 10 or 20 foot net, I don't want to throw it and get all my shad in one throw. Okay, that's a lot of shad, a lot of flipping. They're beating themselves up. I only want to catch, you know, 5 shad at a time. You know, 10 shad. You know, 10 shad at a time is just, to me, is too much. So once I get them, I put them into a small tank, maybe like a you know, a 20-gallon drum or something, and let them puke and let them purge a little bit. And then I will put them into my tank, and that's going to eliminate how quickly you're going to have to clean your filters. But a good tank, make sure you got good water. I always start with city water, and then add additives to it like water softener salt and chlorine remover, things like that. Stress coat is actually what I use. You can buy it at PetSmart. It's got every additive in it that you need for, you know, hard water, chlorinated water, stuff like that. And keeping your water cool. That's a big thing too. A lot of people were worried about adding ice to the bait fish. Don't worry about it. In the heat of the summer, you don't want to add a bunch at one time. You don't have to worry about the chlorine. You don't have to worry about nothing. Okay? Put a little bit of ice in there at a time. Keep your water temperature cooled down.
What stretches do you prefer most for flatheads?
What stretches of river do I prefer the most for flatheads?
What structure?
Oh, what structure? Springtime, I like rock, concrete, stuff like that. Come summertime, they really go towards wood and sunken barges, things like that. Anybody else? Who's back here?
If you use bluegill, do you prefer to cut them or keep them whole?
Both. I don't mind to cut a bluegill. The question was, if I use bluegills, do I use them alive or do I use them cut? I don't mind to cut them at all. You know, in the springtime, and whenever I think of a bluegill, to a flathead, it is actually kind of like a predator to its eggs. So I use springtime. I use a lot of bluegills, and it's more as a reaction bite, more so than a want bite. But they do eat them, you know, all over the country because they want to. But I try to get them to react to that fish and to that bluegill more so than them wanting to eat it. Okay, question was, when is pre and post spawn, and when is the best time to fish? May to the second week of June is the best time to fish, depending on your area. So I like 60, once that water temperature hits 60, it's kind of like the time for me to really concentrate and be on the water, because that's prime for me, okay? Now once that water temperature reaches like 72, 73, 75, somewhere in there, that kind of triggers them, and it's normally the second week of June they kind of go on spawn. So through that time period to the first part of August, depending on, you know, and it all depends on weather too. If you get a big flood, they may not spawn, the females might just absorb the eggs. But that period right there is probably the worst. And then once you get into post-spawn, like August, they will actually feed up pretty heavily and then kind of become homebodies, you know, and rest and things. Now, once the water temperature starts cooling down, the nights start getting longer in the fall, they will feed up again almost as good as springtime, and that usually happens around September, October time. Anybody else?
Is there a better time of day, night? What do you prefer?
Question was day or night. Man, I love daytime. You know, a lot of people ask me why I prefer daytime. Well, I feel safer. You know, I would target them different. You know, everything that I kind of talked about today on those isolated key structure areas was more oriented towards daytime. And I guess I should have told you that. You know, if you're going to target them at night, now not all fish are going to be roaming up into the flats where the bait is, but a lot of the hungry fish will go roaming, you know. So if they're in a certain tree, and I know that, to me it's easier to catch them that way than trying to intercept them going where they want to feed at. Does that make sense?
You ever use bluegill heads just like you use skipjack heads?
Do I ever use bluegill heads just like skipjack heads? Absolutely. And that is a phenomenal bait. I mean, you know, they do eat bluegills, you know, as a regular bait fish. And I do love just bluegill heads.
So do you go just right behind its head, or do you add, you know what I'm saying, how much do you use there?
Question was, how do I cut my bluegill?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and that depends on the size. You know, the fish that I'm holding up in the one picture, and it's kind of we're out there in the middle of the river, that was actually caught on a bluegill head. Okay, and it's odd that I know that. My wife says I can't remember anything. But, yeah, selective. But, you know, I kind of let them tell me if they're wanting a bigger piece of the bait, you know, I'll cut just the tail off and use it that way. If sometimes they may just want the center section, you know, they can be very picky in what they want. But a lot of times, like I said before with bluegills, I'm trying to get them to react to it. But I will actually cut a bluegill right behind the gills, maybe cut the tail off, have two sections, or just cut him in half. Either way, and kind of let them tell me what I want, what they want to do.
You cut them more than you fish them live.
In the spring and in the fall, I do a lot of cut bait. Okay. Now in the summertime, when the currents are low, and you don't really have a current diffusing, you know, your scent trail, then I'll do live bait. Okay. And that's where the double hook kind of comes into play. You may be able to put a live shad down here to attract them, get them to it. They may not really want to eat that big live bait, but they have this smaller bait up here that they'll go to and eat. But you're attracting them in with that injured bait fish.
How do you know if a good area is fishing area without a sonar?
How do you know? Question was, how do you know if an area is fishy without sonar? Correct? Okay, that's a very good question. And there's a lot of things. Are you talking about fishing off the bank or in a boat?
In a boat.
In a boat? Okay. Reading rivers can come, and you can talk to a lot of the guys out here like Doc. There's a very good one sitting right over here. His name's Bink Fox. You know, they learned to read a river by going out on a good calm day, okay? And you will see if that river's slick calm and you see like a riffle or an eddy or something that, you know, on the top of the water, making that water do it, it's something below, making that water move and react, okay? And that's how you know that there's some sort of structure down there below the water. And that's a good way to find fish, is just like that. Being able to learn how to read a river by what you see on the top.
Have you ever used the Soul Lunar table?
No.
No?
What was the question?
Soul Lunar tables, have you ever used those?
Okay, question was a Soul Lunar table.
You really don't eat them, you release them.
Now, you're gonna have to enlighten me, because I'm sorry, I don't know what that is.
There's a table, and we used to look at it on this one site, and it tells you when the fish bite. And it said they were gonna start biting at
okay.
10 o'clock.
Yes, yes. You're talking about like in the magazines of M Fishermen, how they have the best times of the month.
It updates every day on some sites.
Yeah. Okay. I got you now.
No.
Yes. Okay. There is actually times. I had no idea what that was called. And I apologize. But a Soul Lunar table, you know, when the fish are going to be more active, when they're not as active. And yes, that's a good information basis to go off of, you know, and you can compare that with what is actually going on and see, you know, whether you can follow that or not. But a lot of times people ask when the best time to go fishing is. It's just when you can, you know. I've caught some of my biggest fish on what I thought was going to be the worst days, and I would go out whenever I thought I was going to have an absolute great day and just bomb, you know, not catch nothing. And sit there wondering why, what was going on. But no, I've never heard of that. Go ahead.
If you were going to upgrade a sonar, what are you going to look for flathead or any kind of fish in the river?
If I'm going to
upgrade or get a new sonar.
Okay, if I'm going to get a new sonar, what am I going to? And I want to be a flathead fisherman.
Yeah.
Kind of what do I need to lean towards?
Yeah.
Side imaging and structure is really the key for finding that stuff. Okay. I don't really look for fish. I look for those key areas that are going to hold those fish, and 9 times out of 10 they're there. You know, more so than looking for fish with 2D or anything like that. I just try to find those key areas that I think will hold fish, and that's the nastiest cover I can find normally. So a good sonar with, like, say, structure scan or side imaging would be the way I was going to go. Way back here in the back. What is the best advice for bank fishermen? Is that correct? Well, no, you know, springtime and nighttime. So, springtime, you know, those fish are very active. They're very hungry, and it gives a good opportunity to bank fishermen to be able to go out and catch good quality fish. Nighttime, you want to find an area, and you can do this with navionics. Find maybe a ledge that's going down through there where those fish can go to and during the day, where they want to, you know, home up in the daytime, but have a good flat that holds bait at nighttime. And that's going to present yourself with an area where those fish are going to come through and be able to find that bait at nighttime. So hopefully that answers your question. Does the barometric pressure make a difference on how I fish? Absolutely. If I get a fish in and I notice he is covered in mud and he is just buried up to his gills, then that instantly tells me that 1, I need to slow down, and 2, I might need to, you know, small my size of bait up. You know, instead of using half a skipjack or a skipjack head or an 8-inch gizzard shad, you know, go down to 4 or 6-inch gizzard shad, something like that. Now you're asking too much. And it really depends. You know, sometimes when that pressure jumps high or drops real low, it's not really a certain high or low. You want to see consistency. When you see consistency, those fish are going to be more apt to, in my opinion, to eat. But if you get a big jump either way, it might suck them down in the mud. So you really got to, more so than an actual number, you know, when you catch one, and you got to take every detail off that fish and go with it.
How long do you sit on a spot before you decide to move to the next spot?
The question was, how long do I sit? And this will differ, you know, from time to time and current. So if I have perfect conditions, good current, 20 minutes, okay? And I kind of go from there. So if I'm not getting bites, I'll lengthen it out to 30. If I'm getting bites within 10 or 15 minutes, then I'm gonna shorten it up.
You snell your hooks?
Absolutely. I snell everything, all my hooks. It makes a huge difference to me personally. I have had very few flatheads swallow the hook or get throat hooked, gut hooked with a snell, and I really encourage everybody to do that.
Somebody said to me that drums are no good for bait. Is that true?
Man, I've had flatheads. Question was, he said that somebody told him drum was not good for bait, and I've had them puke up just about everything under the sun, and drum being one of them. Sheephead, carp, and I've caught them. You catch the little ones in a cast net, 6-8 inch size, and I use them, and they are good. I mean, do I prefer them? No, they're not one of my first go-to baits, but if I can't catch what I consider 4 food groups for them, then absolutely, I use them.
Asian carp much?
Actually, my biggest fish to date come off of a silver jumping carp.
They got so many names. Silver jumping carp.
We live on Lake Thurman, which Savannah River runs through, and it's about 25 miles down the dam, and we live basically in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
During the summer, bait shops and all the fishermen, including me, there is hardly any fish that would go all the way down where they oxygenate the water way down at the dam. During the summer, do the fish actually travel that 25 miles basically, and do they come back into the same spot?
Okay, question was, you live on Lake
Thurman.
Thurman, and in the summertime, you're wondering if those fish will travel to the dam,
Yeah.
which is 25 mile.
Yeah, maybe a little more.
Now, do I think that all of them do? No. But I do believe that there's probably a good population that do, especially if it's, high oxygenated water. That's where a lot of the bait's going to go and things like that. I mean, they have to have that to live and everything. So that, yes, there's going to be a lot of them go, but now some of them may just go up on the banks, where out of that thermocline to where those, where they can get oxygen and things like that. Does that make sense to you?
Pretty much, the amount of fish you can catch on the size, same during the summer, hardly.
Oh, really? So you're saying the amount of fish that you catch is just goes way low?
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're wondering why in the summertime your fish catch goes lower, correct? Okay. So as the oxygen levels deplete, in that they feel horrible. I mean, they don't feel as active, so they're not going to, be as aggressive or as active. They may not even eat very much until that oxygen comes back, or they get a good rain to wash some fresh water in there, and then they'll do what they need to do.
The river's probably 50, 60 foot deep, in our area, and down by the dam, it's 190. And at the other dam where the water comes out of Lake Russell, it's only about 20 foot. And they release water every day, but then they pump it back. But some of the water they release, goes on down and out the other day. So they get a little oxygenation, from Russell. There's a few fish up there, but mainly they disappear.
I don't think they disappear, but they're definitely going to become harder to catch, and if you're not catching them where you normally do, make a move. Try something completely off the wall that you would never try before, and you will be surprised in what you find, I'm sure.
With these dams running the way they are, with 40-foot columns of water coming through, I always make a joke that they all got one common method. Is that true? What do the fish do in that situation where the water is just raging do they just hunker down in the hole?
So question was, whenever we get like a flood per se,
Like
what-
right now, it's running so bad.
Yeah.
And I wanna go fishing 2 weeks from now, okay? Are those fish still gonna be there, or did they walk down to Memphis?
No, they're not. They're not in Memphis. They're not in Memphis. The question was, we get floods. Are the fish still there? Yes, yes, they are. I mean, they're just going to find an area. You know, a 40-pound fish doesn't need really a whole lot to get behind and lock up. Now, if he locks up and he's in 2-mile-an-hour current, 3-mile-an-hour current, is he going to
jump up and try to catch something?
No, because he will end up in Memphis.
Well, this is probably 30-mile-an-hour current.
But they will find backwaters, or some area like an eddy, a seam line, where they can get up on the bank, out of the current, and out of harm's way.
So on the rise is when they're going out.
Yeah, and then as the water drops back down, they can feel it, and they're going to come out with it. Wherever they feel safe, they'll be. Now they're not going to be in the middle of the river, but they'll find those seam lines and those little areas on the bank and go to. And to be honest, in high current situations, is another time for bank fishermen to go and target those things off the bank. And you don't have to cast way out. Just you'd be surprised how close to the bank you can actually catch real good fish.
What depth of water do you find them in most of the time?
So, what depth of water do I find them in the majority of the time? I like to stay between that 20 and 30, but I try not to be hard-headed. So if they're not there, I'll go deeper or go shallower. Especially in the cooler months when the water warms up and you get a couple days of nice warm water, they will move up shallow and warm up in some sort of structure or something.
When you snell your hook, do you go towards the eye or away from the eye?
When I snell my hooks, do I go towards the eye or away from the eye?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will run my line right straight back to the shank of the hook, and then I snell clockwise, and then put it back to the back of the hook and pull it down. That's the no-knot snell, and I really have had great success with that.
You said your wife says you're very difficult. So when you put your poles out, do you mark or note anything to where you can say, okay, this was cut, this was live, this was chunked or sizes, so you can come back and go, they're hitting on this, or do you just kind of remember it?
Well, I don't really write it down. I just kind of remember it. And there's times, you'll forget, obviously. But it does make a difference, and you do want to keep note of it. And if you do write it down, that's great. Me personally, I don't. But if I am pre-fishing, like say I go to fish a tournament, then I will have a notebook, and every little detail is wrote into that notebook. That way, come the night before the tournament, I can put all those little details together and have the best odds that I can instead of making rash decisions.
As you get older, you will start writing it down.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Do you hit mark on your electronics when you waypoint?
Okay, so do I hit?
When you catch a fish, do you hit mark?
So the question was, do I hit mark when I catch a fish? Odds are I already have an idea of what's there, as far as structure or cover, and I'm not so much worried about catching the fish as I am finding, like I said, that heavy structure that
He might not be there today, but he's there tomorrow.
Yeah. And odds are he's there somewhere. He may just not eat, but he's there. Especially, and that's something, not every place has a high population of flatheads. Something I tell a lot of people, no matter where you're at, you have a good biologist that usually does surveys on that body of water. So first you need to call them and see if there is a good population of them. If there's not a good population of them, we don't really know if we're doing the right things or not.
Do you usually fish alone?
I fish alone a lot. There's,
A lot of your videos are by you.
And I don't know if it's because by choice or by choice of other people.
You don't play well with others.
My wife says I'm hard to get along with. Go ahead.
If you go to a new body of water that you've never been on, don't know anything about it, obviously you don't know where isolated cover is. How do you approach it?
Okay, question was, if I go to a new body of water, how do I approach it if I don't know where isolated cover is, correct? So, that starts weeks in advance, okay? If you know, say we're gonna go to Wheeler here in a couple weeks, okay? And that tournament preparation starts weeks in advance. We got 75 miles of Wheeler Lake. If you get there on a Thursday, you're gonna be overwhelmed. You know, you're not gonna really know where to go. But we can start breaking that down at the house by looking at Navionics and Google Earth. And now we're gonna break that down into what we feel is our strengths. For instance, Wheeler Lake. Somewhere in that, there used to be a river and there still is. So somewhere in that body of water, there's gonna be more lake-like water and more river-like water, okay? Just by doing that, we can break that down into, say, 43 miles of river, 33 miles. So we're automatically starting to break that down. Now we're going to go to our Navionics and Google Earth, and we're going to break that 40 miles down into smaller sections and take notes of them. You know, where that river comes around, where we think that heavy cover and structure is going to end up settling. And now, instead of having 40 miles, we're down to 10 or 15 miles, maybe 20 areas that we want to go look at. And that'll keep you from being overwhelmed, and you'll have a good starting point to go from.
Basically, the river channel, you're gonna start there kinda, and outside bends and, you know.
Yeah, so question was, do I start on outside bends of the river channel things? Yes, absolutely. Just like most rivers, that stuff is gonna settle just like a river you would see around your own home. And we just wanna mimic that when we get there, or what we're looking at. If I know where I'm from on the higher river, when that river cuts sharp on an outside bank, it's gonna be deeper, and then it's going to push everything, and as that water goes back across the river, that stuff's going to settle. I'm going to look for that just like I would at home there on the screens, and then go there, and a lot of times it's there and a lot of times it's not, and that's where you got to have a lot of key areas to go look at.
When you anchor up on a structure, if you catch a nice flathead, do you reel up? Do you think, well, that's it there, and reel up and go to another structure, or do you keep fishing?
Okay, question was, and I'm going to use summer for example, okay? In the summertime, if I come up on a key structure area and I catch one adult, and whenever I say adult, I'm talking 30, 40 pounds flathead, do I just reel up and leave and go on, or do I keep fishing, give it longer? Now that can go both ways, okay? But odds are, if he is in there, he's the dominant one of that. Okay? A lot of times, and it does happen, you will catch more than one big flathead in an area. And I will stay there and give it 10, 15 more minutes. But more times than not, if he is the main one in there, you might catch smaller ones, but he's the main guy in there.
When you anchor up like that, how many rods do you use to fish?
Question is, when I anchor up, how many rods do I fish? And that depends on where I'm at. But man, I will throw as many as I can. I got, like 14 monster rod holders on my boat, and if I can put 14 rods out without making a really huge mess, I'll do it. A lot of times if you got too much current though, you can't. They all end up behind the boat. But as many as I possibly can. I want that scent trail going down that river as heavy, as thick as I can get it.
Usually you use 12. I was wondering if you're using too many and not watching the boats.
No, I don't think so. Keep using them. Anybody else?
You always start upriver and work your way back, or?
The question was, do I start upriver and work my way back? Yeah, normally. That gives you a couple things. If you're going upriver looking for stuff, then you don't have to backtrack. If you're looking at your sonar and you see something, you can automatically throw your buoy out or mark it on your sonar, and not have to come back and try to retrace things. And you can just go straight up, throw your anchor, and fish it. And if you got, let's say you got several places in a row, coming down through there, Now, in that case, I may not. I may go to the end of it and work my way up, so that I don't have that scent trail going all the way down through everything, and possibly pulling some of those smaller fish up there, and I may hop over top of them. Does that make sense? Anybody else?
To add to that question he was asking, as far as going upriver while you're looking, do you have your transducer low enough to be able to on plane look at structure as you're going along, or do you tuck it up for safety wise and then just have to slow down and look at structure?
Okay, question was, as far as my transducer goes, or speed wise, how fast am I going, and do I have my transducer setting kind of down, or do I keep it up for protected reasons? Mine's mounted solid, and I got it just a shade underneath of my boat. I believe it's like 1/8 of an inch below the bottom of my boat. When it comes to speed, I usually run between 3 and 4 mile an hour. Slow. I want a good picture of it. I don't like to go fast. You miss a lot of things. You may see something going 5 mile an hour, 6 mile an hour or so, and you think it's too small, but you go back across it and at 3 mile an hour, and it may end up being a 100-foot log. Anybody else?
We usually use herring
Mm-hmm.
to fish with. I bought, got some skipjack shipped to me, but I haven't had any luck with the skipjack. What would you suggest?
Question was, you use herring mostly. You got some skipjack to use, and you didn't have much luck with it. Wherever you're at, use the bait fish that is relevant to your area. Okay. If that's what they're used to, feed them that. Will they eat the other stuff? Yes, but I feel personally that they're smart enough to know, hey, I've never seen that before. Even though a herring and a skipjack are really similar, I believe that the big fish know that's not natural. So I would.
Usually the herring will get about 4 or 5 inches long, and that's it. They're small.
But that's what they're used to. I mean, there's days when those fish, even though there's 8-10 inch gizzard shad in that river, they may only want something that's 2, 3, 4 inches long. So don't be afraid to throw big baits, but also don't be afraid to change and throw something small when things aren't working. You'd be surprised the amount of fish I've caught off of a thumbnail sized piece of bait. Anybody else? Question was, do I typically descale my bait? I like to, a lot of times if I can. Sometimes moon eye, will get kind of mushy, especially if it dies on you. You can keep it alive, but sometimes it dies and it gets mushy really quick. Okay, but if you can scale those, it makes it a lot easier to get that hook through without kind of oozing that stuff out the sides of it. But it also will allow more scent to come out too, by scaling it off and let more scent out. So yeah, I prefer to scale them if I can. John.
Do you think it's coincidence that you've won 2 Cabela's King Cat Anglers of the Year since becoming a Warrior Cat Rods Pro staffer? I'm up here for my next thing, so he doesn't know I'm going to do this, but I'm embarrassing for him.
Well, now, you might get mad at me for saying this.
You knew it was coming, didn't you?
Well, here's the thing. I love Warrior Cat Rods. John and Warrior Cat Rods and the team, they make absolutely great rods. But with that being said, and take this with a grain of salt, that you can catch fish on every rod that's in that room. Absolutely. The number one thing is you've got to have confidence in whatever you're using. Okay, whether it's Ripping Lips, Warrior Cats, Big Cat Fevers, Tomcat, it doesn't matter. You have to have confidence in it. And I told a gentleman in here a minute ago, it doesn't matter what you have. You can have the best gear on the market, proven to be the best gear on the market. If you don't have confidence in it, it's not going to work for you.
So, with that being said, Chris didn't know I was going to do this, but I usually talk pretty loud, but since we got people back here. So Chris didn't know I was going to do this, but Chris has been a pro staffer of ours now for 2 years. He approached us at Catfish Conference the very first year, actually the week we launched our rods. And he come back and forth to the booth, I don't know, 5 times looking at our rods before he finally pulled the trigger. I think his dad won one.
Yep.
And he come back and he decided to buy 2, and he's one of them guys, hey, I'm going to buy 2. Will you give me a free hat? Y'all know those kind, right?
I'm frugal.
So, and I was telling Tony with Big Cat Fever this story earlier, but he was wearing a Big Cat Fever hat at the time, okay? So I told him, I'll give you a free hat, but you got to take that hat off and wear mine out. So he did, and I think later on that year, he won 2nd place or 1st place fishing by yourself.
Charleston, 2nd.
Yeah, so it was a big tournament, and he did a great job by himself, and he was wearing that hat. Okay, so I started watching him. So for all you guys that have asked about pro staffing and stuff, we do watch. So I started watching him. It was maybe, 3 or 4 months later that I approached him.
He's seen my success.
Yeah, I've seen his success since using Warrior Cat rods. And so I approached him. And Chris has been awesome. Any of you guys that have followed his brand, followed his YouTube stuff, he's been awesome. So I want to present Chris with our first ever and our 2017 Pro Staffer of the Year Award. So
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do for us. And I figure this is a great place in front of your peers to show you guys. So if you're wondering what you can do to grow your brand, because I know there's a lot of guys out there, watch what this guy's doing. The other thing I'm going to do is Chris's very next video that he does on YouTube. There's a Warrior Cat rod sitting back there. We're going to have him give away a rod on his
Awesome.
YouTube channel, but you must subscribe to be eligible for that. So if you're not, get involved. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. I want to get a picture real quick.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm on 3 right now.
Easy.
All right, good job.
Corey.
We got to get a family picture
Yeah, I
real
got
quick.
my thing. She's watching videos on Facebook.
Oh, okay. We can
Okay.
get one afterwards.
Yeah, we'll get one in a minute.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And, if there's no more questions, I can't say thank you guys. You got more questions? All right.
I know you like live bait. What about
Yes.
using what's left over when you flay a crop?
Okay, question was, he knows I'll use live bait, but what about leftovers for crappie? Now, if you fish an area that you can legally use crappie, okay? Well, where I'm from, we have white bass, okay? And a lot of people don't, they don't take the time to catch white bass. But if there's certain game fish that you can actually catch legally and use, if that is something that you can do, and that's the bait that is in the area. I mean, crappie. There's a lot of people catch a lot of fish on crappie, and I've seen it personally. But then use it. Absolutely.
White bass just as well.
White bass just as well, if you can legally do it. Now, some places you can't. There's some of the Carolina states you're not even allowed taking a skipjack to, I believe. But just make sure that you're doing things legally. This sport is growing, and the professionalism of it is growing, and we want to grow with it. We want to try to do things as proper, as the right way as we can, and be better role models. I want to try to be a better role model for my daughter and for other kids that may watch me. I want to make sure that they know that I'm going to do the right thing. So first and foremost, make sure that it is legal, and if it is, by all means, give it a shot. Question is, one,